What is going on, everyone? I hope you're all doing well. Today, we are going to be taking what I think is a very interesting look at Rainbow Six Siege, which is a beloved franchise by many, myself included. I've been playing this game going all the way back to the initial alpha, which came out at the start of 2015. The game obviously came out later that year on December 1st, 2015, and I'm still playing it to this very day, although recently I've been playing a little bit more Modern Warfare. I still love Rainbow Six Siege, so I thought it would be interesting to go back and compare the 2015 version with the 2020 version in terms of its PC performance, as well as graphical changes to the game, which are actually a lot more significant than I had initially thought. I know this game got a big optimization patch a couple of years ago, and it definitely did help improve the frame rate quite a bit, by about 20% roughly in my comparison here. Now, you may be asking yourself, Joker, how are you doing this comparison with the 2015 version of the game when you only have access to the latest version, which is currently 4.3, and it's quite simple. Even though I own the game, I actually went and I pirated it. That's right. I don't feel bad about this at all. I've done this in the past for games where DRM had been removed from titles, so yes, I own Rainbow Six Siege. I have hundreds of hours logged into it, so I own a legal license of this game, so I don't feel bad about going and pirating the games for the sake of this video so that I can get the original 1.0 version of the game that was released to the public on December 1st, 2015. So that's what we're going to be doing here today in this video. Now, for my graphics comparison, I wanted to make sure that all of my settings were exactly the same, so I did that within the menus, which does not mean that I instantly ramped everything up to the highest setting possible for a couple of reasons. Number one, on December 1st, 2015, when the game came out, there was no Ultra HD texture pack. That was added as a free downloadable piece of content on December 15th, 2015. So 2 weeks later, which was actually the first update that Siege had received from Ubisoft, they added in this DLC where you could download an Ultra HD texture pack, which is actually great. I use it in my 2020 version of the game when I'm playing it, but for the sake of this, since the original vanilla version of the game did not have it, I did disable that. And I also had to disable any NVIDIA graphics options on the 2020 version of the game, because at some point in time, Ubisoft actually decided to completely pull all NVIDIA Gameworks features from Rainbow Six Siege, HBAO Plus as well as TXAA, which were in the game when it first came out. They actually made a pretty big deal about it. NVIDIA made a trailer for the Gameworks features in that game, which I actually parodied. However, if you go and search up that trailer on YouTube right now, the only one that I was able to find was from IGN, which you'll be seeing playing right now. All of the other versions that were published by Ubisoft and probably on the NVIDIA GeForce YouTube channels as well are completely gone. So it seems like that partnership is over. And when you launch the game, the NVIDIA Gameworks or the NVIDIA, the way it's meant to be played, splash screen has been completely removed from the game as well, on top of the graphics options. So I was curious as to why exactly this happened, and I was able to find a patch note that was then quoted by the community manager over on the Rainbow Six Siege forums, and he had this to say: "We currently have two different SSAO or screen space ambient occlusion techniques to render ambient occlusion, SSBC and HBAO+. Lately, our 3D team has been working on replacing the HBAO+ with an improved SSBC+ technique," which they did eventually do. And SSBC, if you're not familiar with it, basically it's similar to HBAO. It's an ambient occlusion technique, but it's Ubisoft's own in-house ambient occlusion technique. So if you look at pretty much any Ubisoft title, you'll probably see it present in there. Things like Siege, Assassin's Creed games, the Division titles, you'll be able to usually see an SSBC option in those games, which, as I said, is their own in-house form of ambient occlusion. The community manager, or the patch note that he quoted, goes on to say, "We have done this because we want to have control on what is rendered on screen. Overall, this will give us greater control over the implementation of graphics options across all platforms and enables us to increase the overall quality of image rendering across the board." But he does say that there is no noticeable performance difference between SSBC Plus and HBAO Plus. So that is directly from Ubisoft as to why they removed that option. They don't go into detail why they removed TXAA as well, but for whatever reason, obviously they've completely removed all NVIDIA Gameworks features from Rainbow Six Siege at this point in time, and it doesn't look like they're going to be coming back anytime soon. So for that reason, I used SSBC as well as FXAA in both of my testing. If you look at the graphics options here, it does get cut off on the 2020 version of the game, and because they kind of made the boxes bigger, but all of the settings were exactly the same here. I used FXAA, and I also did disable zoom in depth of field on the 2020 version of the game, mostly just because it's an option I prefer to turn off, but everything was exactly identical to the 2015 version of the game, so that means no Ultra Texture Pack, no HBO Plus. I was using just regular SSBC because that was available and still is available in both versions of the game, and FXAA is available in both versions of the game as well. But there was some other anti-aliasing options back in the 2015 version of the game. On top of TXA, they also had MSA or multi-sample anti-aliasing. They had that in 2x, 4x, and 8x, which can get extremely demanding on your GPU. And to be honest, it's really not that necessary. The game looks pretty good running on FXAA or even with anti-aliasing off if you're playing at a high enough resolution. So with all of the graphics settings the same, I honestly expected the game to look, well, the same, but to be honest, it's actually vastly different. There were some things I noticed, like the reflections on the 2020 game were a little bit better, but overall, I have to say, I think the 2015 version of this game looks much better. In this shot right here, you could see the outside of house at night. Both of these were set to night on custom game mode, so I can just kind of go around and take a look at things, and it's definitely darker on the 2015 version of the game, I would say. And as a result, the lighting, I think, looks a lot better, a lot more realistic, although on the 2020 version, you can see that there is a very big difference in terms of the skybox. They added a lot of detail into the sky with things like clouds and stuff like that, whereas on the 2015 one, it's just kind of a big gray box. It doesn't really look like anything at all. So the skyboxes have been improved quite a bit, especially here at night on the house map, but overall, as I said, I think the 2015 version looks a lot better. I mean, even the cop car looks better. Like the one on the right looks like a rent-a-cop car. The one on the 2015 version looks like a legitimate police vehicle. So even a small detail like that, I think it looks a lot better on the original version of the game. And I don't know why they would go and change a detail like that, but I do think the 2015 version looks better. And you can let me know down in the comments below. And of course, walking through the house, those details were there as well, where I noticed a lot more sort of use of shadows and ambient occlusion effects, even though I was, as I said, using SSBC on both of these and identical graphics options. The 2015 version, I just think, looks a lot more realistic and darker, not just in terms of how it looks, but the tone. It feels like a darker world that you're in. It's a little more gritty and kind of like dark looking, I guess. And I think it makes the game look more realistic. Obviously, the 2020 version of the game is a lot brighter. It's like the whole house is just lit up like immensely, and it looks just, in my opinion, looks too clean. Now, this might be a good thing in terms of competitive gameplay, wanting to be able to see everything as best as possible, and in some cases, competitive players might even turn down graphics options to get it to look more like the 2020 version. So that could be a reason why they did that, to make the game a little bit more competitive. But just visually speaking, I think the 2015 version is not only just darker looking in general, but as a result, I think it makes the world seem a lot more realistic in terms of the way the shadows react to the lighting and everything like that. But leave me your thoughts on that down in the comments below on what you think of the actual visuals. The visual differences do not change there. I also did an explosion on the garage in the same exact spot, and you'll notice that after the explosion goes off on the ground, in the 2015 version of the game, there is a ton of debris everywhere, whereas on 2020, it's almost like an explosion didn't happen. Like there's an opening in the garage door, but there's no actual debris or effects that you can actually feel and see in the game world. So this is another case where the 2020 version has received a massive downgrade by Ubisoft. It's just a huge visual downgrade, and one that leaves you scratching your head as to why would they remove that? Is it for, competitive play because it's not necessary to competition? But in my opinion, give us that option if we want to turn off, certain physics effects and stuff like that. But overall, the 2015 version, as I've said a couple times here, I think just looks significantly better to the 2020 version of the game, whether, they added in ultra textures and a couple more things like that. Still, the game with the same exact graphic settings just looks better on the 2015 version, but it does run worse, which kind of makes sense. It seems a little bit more there's more graphical detail there. So I think that's one of the big reasons why there is a pretty significant difference in terms of performance. I did run the benchmark, and all the testing here was just done on my main gaming system with a 2080 Ti at 4K and an i9 9900K running at 4.8 gigahertz. So I just used the same card, same CPU setup for all this testing, and it was done within a few minutes of each other, honestly, all on the same system. So going through that benchmark run, at the end, the 2015 version got an average of 83.8 frames per second and a 59.6 FPS low, while the 2020 version got 99.7 average FPS and an 86.5 FPS low, which is roughly an 18.9% performance improvement on the 2020 version, and this was using DX11. Obviously, in 2015, they didn't have Vulkan, which was recently added in on the 4.3 patch. If you missed my video on that, if you go ahead and use Vulkan, you're going to actually go ahead and gain an additional 10% in performance on the game. And in a game where, you know, frames per second matters more than anything, I think for a lot of people, they're probably willing to sort of take this trade-off in visuals to be able to get better frame rates. But it's to someone, you know, also likes to enjoy the graphics in the game and can enjoy you know, the graphics as well as a high frame rate. I do find it kind of disappointing that the game looks the way that it does in the current year. Although we are getting a fair bit better performance, I would still love to see the option to have what I would say are not only better but more realistic looking graphics from the original version of the game. So that's really everything I got for you for this comparison between the 2015 and 2020 version of Rainbow Six Siege. I really do look forward to seeing your guys' feedback down in the comments below on this, and if you would like to see me do similar testing to this on other titles, that's something we can definitely explore. So if there's a game you want to recommend down in the comments, maybe something where you've noticed a difference over time in, and it's a game where I own the game or can buy the game, obviously, and then maybe go and pirate the original version of the game to do a comparison like this, I would definitely be open to suggestions, as I think this could be a great series to start doing here on the channel. So please leave your suggestions down below. Also, I did quickly want to comment on the way Rainbow Six Siege just kind of feels, and I think the 2015 version also felt better to me. It just felt a little quicker, and I think one of the main reasons for that is the recent changes to the aim down sight speeds and probably other, you know, nerfs and buffs that have happened over time. But just playing on some of the situations, obviously I couldn't hop into multiplayer or even access Terrorist Hunt. I was only able to play the situations that are built into the game. The 2015 version felt a lot faster to me. As I said, on version 4.3, they introduced, they increased aim down sight speeds across the board, and they did it by a significant margin. Like assault rifles went from being 0.30 seconds to aim down sights, and now it's 0.40. So that's a pretty huge jump. Another tenth of a second might not sound like a lot, but it really is in reality. That is a pretty huge increase. It's like 33% more actually. So that's a lot, and I could definitely feel that in the 2020 version of the game. It feels extremely slow, and going back to the 2015 one, I'm not sure exactly what the aim down sight speeds were at that time, but it feels a lot faster and snappier to me, and something I wish they would kind of revert, because they changed the aim down sight speeds across the board, increased them across the board on all weapons, which doesn't make any sense, because if you were gonna, you know, nerf one or buff another to maybe fix balance, that would kind of make sense. But if you're just going to increase them just flat out for every single weapon, it's just going to make the game feel slower, and it seems like an unnecessary adjustment. Also unnecessary to things like they did to basically downgrade the visuals of Rainbow Six Siege over the last 4+ years since the game came out in 2015. But that's all I've got for you guys today on Rainbow Six Siege. As I said, I look forward to your guys' comments on this and your opinions on maybe future games we can do testing like this in the future. So I'm going to go now. If you enjoyed this video or learned anything new, you know what to do. Stick a thumbs up on it, subscribe if you're not already, and if you've been here for a while, consider maybe ringing the notification bell. That way you never miss a video as soon as it goes live on the channel. And I'll see you tomorrow for another video. Ta-ra.